Welcome back to MGD 111. We're going to continue looking at some of our basic adjustments that we can make to our photos. So again, we have the Seaside JPEG here, and it's in its original state. Remember, we don't want to keep adding on all of these effects. It's going to start to get kind of weird. We can't see what they're doing. So, image. And we want to go under Adjustments. And there's one called Hue and Saturation. So let's click on that one. And what does that do? It used to be called Hue, Saturation, and Brightness. And in fact, in some circles, it's still called that. Now it's Hue, Saturation, Lightness. So it's HSL, but still referred to as HSB in a lot of things. So what does this mean? Well, it kind of does a similar function as some of our other adjustments, the brightness and contrast. Let's start at the bottom here. Lightness, we're brightening the picture or darkening it. Now, it's not working quite the same way that the brightness function did. It's just really putting an overall wash on everything. So it's working with a different algorithm. This goes from 0 in the middle to plus 100 or minus 100. And again, don't worry about what these units represent. It's just that they are some sort of relative scale. Saturation is kind of a similar thing. However, check this out. We're pumping more and more color into it when we increase it, or we're taking some of the color out of it as we decrease it. In fact, if you get down all the way to minus 100, what we have here is, well, some of you would call this a black and white photo, but remember, it's more of a grayscale photo because there's shades of gray in between. What's kind of cool, though, somewhere in the middle here, there's some really neat effects that are happening. We have what's almost just sort of a duotone photo, where it's just black and white with a little bit of color thrown in there. Or we can also pump up the color and make it really go nuclear. If you go a little too far, though, you can see the pixels really start to melt together. But somewhere around, say, 61 or so, it really starts to get pumped up. Careful using this tool because you can really sort of mess things up. I'm going to hold down the Option and Reset. Now, Hue is the really fun one. If you see these rainbows at the bottom here, they look identical. Watch what happens when I move the slider on the hue. Notice how the bottom rainbow is moving. And what it's doing is basically, it's saying, whatever was red right here is now this shade of green. Whatever was orange is now this shade. Whatever was green here is now this indigo, and so on and so on. So what you're doing basically is just shifting the overall color of your picture. And in fact, if you go all the way to 180, while this is a cool looking picture, it's actually an exact negative. Think about it, 180 degrees from something is the opposite. And if we pull the slider all the way to the other end of the spectrum, you'll see we're at minus 180, which is exactly the same thing. So this actually does work as a loop, although to get from here to past here, we have to go to the other end. But the cool thing about this is we can really create some crazy looking effects with this. Another thing too, though, if we were to isolate, say, this green building, well, it's green now, it used to be blue. If we were to carefully isolate all of this blue stuff, we could change the color of just that part of the picture while leaving the rest of it alone, and really create a pretty cool effect there. Now, the neat thing here is we can also apply all of these things together. So we can change the hue, we can decrease the saturation, we can increase the lightness. Just go with all kinds of crazy combined effects here. Since you have 3 sliders to worry about, there's quite a few different possibilities. So I'll let you play around with those. But again, hue, saturation, and lightness. I don't use those generally if I'm trying to make something contrasty or brighter. I use either the curves or the brightness contrast slider. But I do like to use this occasionally if the color is just a little bit off and I just want to sort of tweak it and see if I can do something more interesting with it. So again, I'm going to hit cancel here and go back to your original state of the picture here, and we will continue with this photo in our next lesson.